Now, let's change note. On a brighter note, this is a Black History Month, and we want to take time tonight to recognize leaders here in our Black community. Reggie Dial is a member of the 100 Black Men of West Texas, an organization that focuses on building up young people and empowering Black men and women.
He told KCBD News Channel 11's Joshua Ramirez about recognizing those who have impacted Lubbock's Black community in the past and who are planting a seed for the future.
For years, Reggie Dial has spent his time serving the community of Lubbock. As president of the 100 Black Men of West Texas, Dial works to mentor young adults and create leaders who can impact the community in the future. A Lubbock native, as a child, he was part of a special group.
I was part of a group of kids in the early 80s that got bused from Wheatley Elementary, Joan Irvin Elementary, to a school that they had just built called Whiteside Elementary. At that time, Lubbock was trying to diversify the schools.
His time at Whiteside planted Dial in the middle of a city effort to better integrate Lubbock's schools. It was the first time Dial felt out of place in a classroom.
If I'm not mistaken, I was the only African American in that class, you know, and so that was the first time that I felt different.
It gave Dial a point of view he hadn't had before.
It was a benefit for me to be able to see the other side of the tracks, you know, to be able to see those different type of experiences, because it expanded my mind.
That knowledge and experience would serve Dial when he eventually joined the 100 more than a decade ago. Attracted by the organization's missions for change and equality, Dial says he was brought in and taken under the wing of other members. The rest is history.
It's so important to have somebody that believes in you. It's so important to have somebody that can guide you in the right direction, and it's somebody to correct you when you're wrong.
That's who Dial says he wants young Black men and women to remember. Not just the Martin Luther Kings or the Malcolm X's of the world. I have a dream. But the ones who grew up right here in Lubbock and made a difference.
Being around people like Quincy Wright and Miss Ruby White, being around people like Dr. Hill and Miss Stephanie Hill, being around people like Miss Rose Wilson, being like Mr. T.J. Patterson, those people played such a influence in my life, not by always talking, by just necessarily seeing their actions and seeing what they're doing in the community.
Dial believes keeping their work going will create a domino effect that will impact much more than just Lubbock.
If we can fix our community, we can fix the city. If we can fix the city, we can fix the state. We fix the state, we can fix the nation.
Dial says if not for the people he's known and the neighborhood where he's from, he wouldn't be who he is.
I don't think I would be the man that I am today without the community that I grew up in, without East Lubbock.
Joshua Ramirez, KCBD News Channel 11.